All right, Steve.
All
What do you
right.
think about this research thing?
Yeah, I think that you're certainly right about people have been making tutorials successfully for a while, but you'll also see different people teaching the same subject, and why not? Uh, Usually, what happens is, I mean, I started doing this because I saw video tutorials and I just didn't like them. I didn't like the ones that I saw, so I thought I'll bring my way of teaching to it, and maybe people will like that. And that's enough of a reason to try to do your own spin on it, because that might be valuable to some people or a lot of people, as it turns
Hmm.
out. And yeah, researching, I think even just an idle interest in the subject matter, you're probably already familiar with some of the things that are out there. For me, as somebody who teaches Houdini tutorials, I'm a big fan of the Intagma tutorials, for example. So I watch those and I am inspired by those to do my own work better as well.
Hmm.
So you'll never stop, if you want to call it researching, or it's really just being engaged with what's out there anyway. I
Hmm.
think that it almost becomes less like work, and it's just that, well, it's just fun to watch the ones if you find one that you like anyway, like I have.
Like one of the things that I always get is that as soon as people realize that usually you're an expert on the subject, or assuming you're an expert on the subject, right?
Yeah.
So if you're an expert on the subject, that also means that you know what's out there, you know what's been done as far as content and everything. So for a lot of people, they are very interested in teaching and very interested in creating content. They get really, really they say, why should I do this if there is already stuff out there, right? And a lot of times it's for free, right? So what would you say to people like that think that way?
I think it goes back to the fact that you're here or you're even interested in doing this in the first place means that you probably have some drive or some angle on it. I mean, first and foremost, things just go out of date. So it's like, if there's stuff that maybe you learned from, that might have been several versions of the program or whatever from before. But also, a lot of times, these topics, these computer graphics topics, are not like, well, I read it in a textbook and this is how to do it. A lot of it comes down to technique. So you're teaching an intangible thing, technique, a lot of the times. It's not literally like, well, you could read the manual or you could learn from me. It's like, well, no, I'm bringing, or you're bringing something that's not in any manual. It's not in a previous tutorial. There's so much room for bringing your own personal experience and expertise, which usually manifests as technique. So I think technique in terms of presentation, again, I didn't like a lot of tutorials that I saw. They were too long, they were too dry, they were people like figuring it out as they went, and there's just blah blah blah. So there's technique can always be improved on, and then there's the actual technique of the skills that you're trying to impart. I think that is probably the most important thing, because that is always going to be unique. You may not even think that your way is necessarily like, well, maybe my way is a little weird or something, but it's like, but that might be a breakout thing. That might be such a novel, like, did you hear about Vishal's technique? Like the way he's doing rigging is like crazy. Like it's so cool. And that's it. And that's how it becomes popular and things like that.
Yeah, totally agree. Like I always tell the story of like when I was in high school, I started doing chemistry, and I have an older brother, 2 years old, who took the class 2 years before me, and I was struggling a lot about chemistry, even though I was really excited about it, really
Mm.
excited about it. Like the way that my teacher was explaining things, it would just not the way that I would learn things, right? So then I asked my brother to explain the same exact book from the same exact book, just telling it to me in a different way.
Yeah.
And oh my God, it opened, like I
Yeah.
became like super good at chemistry, right? So that's to me that always resonated with me because there was a teacher, a professional teacher trying to explain these things to me,
Sure.
could not get it. And then here comes my brother, just 2 years older, and explains it to me in plainest terms. And I'm like, oh, it's making sense now.
Yeah.
So I think that that's
Absolutely.
yeah,
It's the teaching method. It's not usually the content that's
exactly,
suffering.
exactly. And that's what basically what I meant when I say think that you'll always have a spin, your personality, your way of teaching.
Yeah.
Cool. And one last thing about researching, is it something that you did, something special you did for when you were researching your for your tutorials in Applied Houdini?
It really just depended on the tutorial. I think from the get-go, for my earliest tutorials, I just had something to say. Like I was just like, enough of these other tutorials. I know how I want to do it. But I have found since then, as I've come up with other ideas for subsequent ones, that I think implicitly, yeah, I think that I have found, again, from being out there and seeing what's available, I have found that certain types of things are simply more popular than others. I have researched that from my own lessons and how well they do or don't do. But even just seeing other people's things, you find, and again, my domain is Houdini effects. So I might find that, well, things that are really explosive and crazy, like people respond to that. And I tend to see that does well, as opposed to maybe this more technical thing is very important, but maybe not quite as popular. And that goes for mine and for other people's. So I think that, that kind of just being engaged with the community and seeing what's out there. Like you mentioned, there are Facebook groups, for example, for Houdini effects. And you'll see a constant stream of people posting tutorials, free or otherwise. And you can clearly see what's popular and what's not. And ultimately, I will still teach what I want to teach. But I think that if I could find a happy medium between, well, these are things that people want, and it's something that I want to teach, well, it just makes sense to do that first, maybe. I'll do like 2 popular things and then maybe one for myself that I really want to do.
Yeah, I mean, you still want to stay inspired, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like I still want to do what I want to do. And hopefully I might even give you something that you didn't know you wanted. But yes, it's still true that it's going to be more successful. It's going to be more, I hate to use the word profitable, simply to you find a market of things that people want. And in my case, it's explosions.
Yep. Yes. Great. So now before we move forward, I just had to move the little window that I have with our faces on so that I can look in camera instead of looking there. Do you guys still see our faces?
I put mine right underneath the camera.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
I'm looking almost at the camera.
Exactly. That's where I put it now.
Yeah.
Man. All right. So next step is planning.